born in Vienna, Austria in 1933, the only child of Sarah and Friedrich Schwarzbart. His family had lived in Vienna since the 18th century, and his father worked with an import-export company. His mother had been trained as a hat maker, but stayed home with Paul. At age 5, the family left Vienna for Cologne, Germany. From there, his father snuck across the border to Belgium, and Paul and his mother were caught on their first illegal attempt to join him. But they succeeded the second time. It's 1938, right, Paul? In May of 1940, Paul's father was arrested and sent to a labor camp. Paul and his mother remained in Belgium, where she worked for a Belgian family. In 1943, a member of the underground approached Paul's mother and offered to take Paul to safety. It's 1943. She agreed, and Paul was sent away under the name Eckstein, the name of the family for which his mother worked. Paul spent the rest of the war in a Catholic home for boys. Though many Jewish boys were hidden there, Paul thought he was the only one. After liberation, he returned home and found his mother, and it's quite an exciting story. But he found out that his father had been killed at Buchenwald 2 months before liberation. Paul and his mother left for the United States in 1948 and lived for a brief time in New York City before joining relatives in Petaluma. After graduating from UC Berkeley, Paul pursued a teaching career. He was married in 1969, and he and his wife had 2 children. It's always wonderful to welcome Paul and his wife, Sherry. His second wife, Sherry.
No, first wife, Sherry.
First wife, Sherry.
First wife, the other wife was Gail.
The other wife was Gail. Okay. This is the first time he's been married to Sherry.
Mentioned that Gail died.
And Gail passed. She died. But it's always wonderful to welcome Paul and Sherry, to meet with us, and to have Paul share his experiences, and insights, and wonderful spirit. We're going to show a TV documentary that was made about Paul's life and a reunion that he went to in Belgium.
Many of my fellow children, many did not escape and were brutally put to death or tortured. It is beyond imagination. I know that it happened. I know that I was involved in it. I know that I had to go into hiding to escape. I prayed very hard for my parents, my mother and my father, the teachers and the other children. I prayed that none of us would have to die or be hurt before it was over.
was filled with rage and madness and killing. But in the Ardennes forest of Belgium, there was a place of refuge. Tucked away in the small village of Gemoigne was the children's home of Queen Elizabeth. Here, sanctuary was offered to 83 Jewish boys. Sanctuary from the persecution of Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany and the evil of the final solution. Later, in the spring of 1988, the children returned to a reunion, men in midlife with their families and friends, to greet and embrace each other, and the people who were their saviors. This is the story of one of the children who was saved, Paul Schwarzbart of San Rafael, California, teacher, father, survivor, Jew. All that he is was shaped by what happened 50 years ago to a frightened little boy when hell opened up and claimed him.
And I can only forgive things that were done to me. I can never forgive what was done to my father and to the rest of my family. Only they can forgive that. I cannot.
March 13, 1938. Vienna, once the capital of an empire of kings and queens. This historic city is now the center of the Anschluss, the Nazi annexation of Austria, and where Adolf Hitler returns in triumph to the land of his birth. It was here as a young man that he suffered humiliation and failure as a would-be artist, and where he began to nurse his hatred for the Jews. It is also 1 month before the 5th birthday of Paul Schwarzbart, the only child of Friedrich and Sarah Schwarzbart. Austria is the land of their birth in a Jewish family heritage which dates to the 1700s. They had prospered in a country where 200,000 Jews not only made their home, but helped to define the culture. The Schwarzbart family is as much Austrian as it was Jewish. Both of Paul's grandfathers died fighting for Austria in World War I. Now, if Hitler could have his way, the 1,000-year tradition of Austria's Jews is to be obliterated from history.
One morning, my parents were standing at the window looking rather shook up. And I remember going to the window, looking out and seeing this strange, huge flag, a red flag with a white circle and a strange-looking cross in the middle. So overnight, the Austrian flag had been taken down and the Nazi German flag had been put up with a swastika. And this is how quickly it happened.
In Austria's new Nazi regime, the Jews are an enemy of the state. Paul's father had his job taken away, and the family apartment was confiscated and given to a Nazi family. Austria, the land of Strauss and the waltz, is now a land of violence and intimidation, even for children.
Children I'd grown up with, good friends, and all of a sudden we're wearing the button with the swastika and the lapels and telling me, dirty little Jew, to get off the sidewalk and walk in the gutter where I belonged.
The sound of breaking glass gave the name to the night of November 9th and 10th, 1938. Crystal Night, the rampage of terror and destruction directed against the Jews in every corner of Germany and Austria. The Nazi brown shirts were avenging the death of a German diplomat killed by a Jew. When the rampage had ended, the cold November sun revealed over 7,000 Jewish homes and businesses plundered, 300 synagogues put to the torch, close to 100 Jews killed, and 20,000 arrested and deported to concentration camps. In the last days of 1938, as many Jews before them were forced to do, the Schwarzbarts and other family relatives fled their homes, leaving behind everything they once cherished, leaving Austria forever.
All because we were Jews.
In late winter of 1938, the Schwarzbarts smuggled themselves out of Austria through Germany and into Belgium. They are in search of visas for the United States. They find a small apartment in Brussels. It is a Jewish neighborhood, and life is hard.
I remember next door was a woman who sold, down below next door, she sold coal and vegetables. And occasionally she would sell her mother some rutabaga or potatoes or sometimes the leftovers from it, whatever my mother could afford to pay for it. She always managed to cook it. I have disliked rutabaga ever since. I don't think I want to look another one in the face. But it kept us alive.
Again and again, Paul's father calls on the American embassy, but the visas never seem to come. Refugees are not able to obtain work permits, but Paul's mother finds illegal work as a housekeeper. As a result, Paul and his father spend many days together. Neither would know just how precious their time together would be. World War II begins in September of 1939. Poland is invaded, and as Hitler's armies rage on, a young boy and his parents in Brussels try as best they can to lead normal lives. The closeness between a father and son grows stronger.
I remember an enormous love for me, and which I returned. I remember an enormous love for my mother, which set the marvelous example for me both as husband and father. And this is really what is foremost in my memory.
Now, almost a half-century later, in the same Brussels neighborhood, other memories of a past filled with joy and regret are resurrected. The family home in a corner apartment building. Paul, now 55, has not entered this place since his childhood days.
The little apartment that we rented in 39, it was a walk up on the 3rd floor. I feel like an intruder, you know. Okay, here's the 3rd floor. This was it. Looks unoccupied. This was our kitchen. This was our bedroom. It looks unoccupied. Looks like a storage space. Is that really how small it was? This door, it either did not exist, don't remember. If it did exist, it was not one that opened, because this is all there was. My bed was here. There was a stove here. My mother's bed was right here. I always thought it was a large room. It's not a large room. This was our little kitchen. My God, it's small. Stove stood right here. There was, of course, no sink, no water connection. We had to get in the toilet to get the water. There was a large table there. My mother had made curtains for it, so that was a storage space underneath. There were no cupboards already sold. And that's all. That was the kitchen. Good times up here. Yeah. Wonderful family times up here. I never knew it was small, that we were poor or anything like that. Never really felt that. Good times. Long road. You sure don't need much to be happy.
In the same September month of the Nazi blitzkrieg in Poland, Paul Schwarzbart begins the first raid. He is 6 years old.
This is the school where I met Joseph Campé, a wonderful man, my first year teacher, who really taught me French. And then when the Germans said that Jews could no longer go to school, he retired. He would not, if he couldn't teach everyone, he wouldn't teach. Every morning on his way to school, he would drop off a pack of sandwiches for me at the house. So I would eat lunch. So I would eat. And he did that every day. Just a stranger, my teacher. This was a good place. Still looks like a good place. Kids learning.
Friday, May the 10th, 1940, the German army invades Holland, Luxembourg, and Belgium. Disregarding the 3-year-old pact of neutrality, Hitler's swift attacking infantry and panzer divisions overwhelmed the Belgians. On the same day their country is invaded, Belgian authorities begin a roundup of German-speaking refugees. They are seen as potential spies, possible Nazi collaborators. Tragic and ironic, most are Jews running from the Nazis. In the roundup, which lasts 3 days, upwards of 10,000 are seized. Paul's father was among them.
Well, we were on the 3rd floor in our bedroom, and someone knocked at the door, and there were uniformed Belgian police with the white helmets and civilian, and they had papers, and they asked for Friedrich Schwarzbart, and they said that because of the war situation, he, being Austrian, he had to accompany them. It was very simple. It was not unfriendly. It was very matter of fact. And my mother was beside herself. I didn't know what to do. And they said that we could come down to the police station and bring some things to him. And off they went. And this is what it brought the people on the 10th of May, the Germans, the Austrians, all people of German origin, most of whom were Jews, but they didn't care. They stuck them in here, and then they were locked up in this tiny little courtyard, bunches at a time. I still see them all standing there, huddled together. Everybody trying to be optimistic and wishing their wives or whomever, well, they'd be all right. And so my mother and I brought a bundle of clothes here and got it through the grill work, and this is the last place I saw my father. Here, right behind us here, just sticking his hand out, reaching for us. It's a dismal place. It was dismal then, it's even worse now. He told me to take good care of my mother, that he would be back, but that I was the man of the family now, and that I had to take care of Mutti. And neither one of us knew that this was the last time.
The very day of his father's arrest, on the way home from their goodbye, Paul and his mother meet a woman whose family would become their good Samaritans.
My mother went into a Red Cross station to find out if there was anything else we could do for my father, if we could find out where he was being sent and so forth. And as fate will have it, we spoke to a woman named André Eckstein. I think she just reacted to the way my mother and I looked. And took pity on us, and I mean, as a human being in need of solace and help, and she willingly extended her hand.
Andre Epstein, realizing the Schwarzbarts are alone and destitute, offers Paul's mother a job working in the Epstein home, taking care of their children. The husband, George, is an architect. For the next 3 years, Paul spends a great deal of time in their house, and a relationship develops into something much deeper.
They were not Jews, these people who helped us were not Jews, which allowed them a certain amount of freedom that we didn't have, but also linked them very closely with us, and they would have certainly shared our fate if anything had happened to us.
Belgium surrenders 3 weeks after the Nazi invasion, and life for the country's 90,000 Jews becomes even more uncertain and dangerous. In the apartment next to the Schwarzbarts lives a woman who entertains the troops.
Which in this case meant Germans and even SS in their black uniforms, and which scared my mother very, very much, and yet we lived with it. I remember sometimes at night she would, the walls were rather thin, and she would put her hands over my ears to protect my innocence.
Then come the letters written by Paul's father. He is in the mountains of southwest France at labor camps where the Belgian authorities have sent him.
Darling, give special kisses to my child.
The first letter is dated June 26, 1940, soon after France falls to the Germans. More letters follow when the family writes back. The Germans censored the letters, but let them go through as proof of their so-called humanity. What survives are Friedrich Schwarzbart's expressions of hope and love for his family. This is what he writes Paul.
You are my everything, my sunshine, as well as your mothers and the whole families. I'd like to hold you fast, to love you, tell jokes with you, but also, unfortunately, that is not possible, because I'm here. But your picture I carry in my heart, and my thoughts are ever with you.
And there are words of love from husband to wife, words of love between a man and a woman.
This is a poem you wrote my mother on the occasion of their 10th wedding anniversary, October 25th, 1941, around the woods and meadows, and lush green mountains blooming in the sunlight, everything so peaceful, and then God's wonder, and yet much, much more beautiful than all of this are you. I should so much like to love you, kiss your eyes, your hands, your mouth so red, and find it so bitter to have to miss being near you.
By the summer of 1942, the Nazis are after every Jew in Belgium. At first, a deportation quota of 10,000 is established. Jews are told they are needed for work in the East. But then come the street arrests and roundups. Sent to transit camps, the Jews are often beaten and tortured and put on trains bound for Auschwitz. The first group of Jews leaves on September 2nd. Within a month, all 10,000 are deported. For 2 years, Paul's father suffers in the labor camps of France, where 3,000 prisoners die from brutality, starvation, and disease. Stopping short of extermination, the cruelty of the collaborating Vichy government comes close to that of the Nazis. In August of 1942, even that fragile distinction ends. At Germany's demand, the French hand over the remaining prisoners for deportation to death camps in the East.
August 24th, 1942. Dearest city, dearest Paulinka, I find myself going through the train station in Lyon and take the opportunity to send you my warmest greetings and kisses and utmost love. At the first possibility, I shall immediately write again. Stay in good health. God will help. With all my love, your Papa Fritz.
Paul's father never writes again. His 99th letter, his last. There are no letters from his next destination, Gross Rosen, or the one after that, Buchenwald.
My mother often wondered why nothing happened to us, but I think that she simply accepted it. That's really how life was in those days. The person next to you was arrested and you kept on walking. Someone on the street was shot and you were not. And one was just grateful to be alive no matter how tough it was. And of course it started to get tough really in 42 and 43, and that's when the underground approached my mother and asked her whether she wanted to save my life, which was an interesting question to ask a mother. And if she did want to save my life, she'd have to simply give me up.
Paul's mother, now seeing the Nazis rounding up old people and children, talks to the Ecksteins about the choice she must make. When the stranger from the underground returns that night, she has her answer.
When she was handed that lifeline for me, I think she grabbed it. It seems to me that she had been probably agonizing over the problem of finding a solution of what to do with me, how to save me.
Paul is to leave this night. The Ecksteins offer him the use of their family name. The destination is secret. Not even his mother is told.
And she got a bundle of clothes together for me. Some good shoes, and some warm underwear. And the man came, and she said yes. And we kissed goodbye. It wasn't quite so simple, but... And off I went into the night with this man holding me by the hand. And he took me to the train station, the Luxembourg, and he put me on a train and told me where I was going, and told me to take care of myself, which meant, remember, you're not Jewish. And then he walked away and I never saw him again. And a few hours later I ended up in the Ardennes, a little village of Jamogne.
It is May 13, 1943. Paul Schwarzbart, now Paul Eckstein, does not know whether he will ever see his mother again. He is 10 years old.
And now that I am a father, I'm beginning to understand what she must have gone through to say yes, to letting her son walk away in the night, not knowing whether she would ever see him again. It must have torn her heart out.
Located on the Samoa River, Jamogne is a farming village of about 1,000 people during World War II, and it is during the war that this 19th century chateau becomes a shelter for the needy children of Belgian soldiers. Named for the Queen Mother of Belgium, Queen Elizabeth, the chateau now becomes a place of secret refuge for Jewish children, a special place in the life of 10-year-old Paul Schwarzbart.
I arrived in Germany in the morning and then I was picked up. Hadn't thought about that for years.
The Jewish boys aged 5 to 14 begin arriving in March of 1943. They are overseen by 30 teachers and monitors and by a handful of nuns from the Order of the Sisters of Charity.
In the morning, we would be having classes with these various teachers who would try to maintain our education. And in the afternoon we played. We went out in the woods as scouts, and we built our huts, and we had our scouting games.
They all learn about getting along, about living with other human beings. Paul becomes a Cub Scout leader.
There I was, broad as can be, probably the shortest among them. Along with Pojulis, my mentor, and walking almost side by side with him. I remember always gave me such a good and proud feeling.
With Paul's father lost to him, 23-year-old Paul Juris becomes one of the most important people in young Paul's life.
He said that when I arrived there, I seemed lost and very sad. He talked to me, and it just clicked. And that one person extending his hand to me, I think made all the difference. It made some of the loneliness disappear, some of the fear. I have enormous love for that man.
The home is administered by Emile Taquet, a retired Belgian army officer, and his wife Marie, a couple with no children of their own.
Every night she would tuck every and each boy in his bed and kiss him goodnight. And I remember how we waited for Maman Taquet to come out. We wouldn't go to sleep if she were detained until she had kissed us goodnight.
The chateau is in a remote corner of the Ardennes forest. German troops are a constant threat. Other safe houses in Belgium are discovered and their children and benefactors arrested and sent to death camps. One early morning in July of 1943, truckloads of Nazis with machine guns pull up to the chateau and begin to search its rooms and hallways.
I was so frightened that I wet my bed. We were on thin straw cots. This went right through and dripped onto the floor, where it was audible. And I remember two of the German soldiers hearing it and looking under the bed, and then one laughing at the other and saying, this kid just peed in his pants. And they thought very good-naturedly, this was very funny. All they had to do was throw back the covers and it would have been the end of fun.
One of the monitors, the one nicknamed Mouton, is taken, presumably to his death. But by some unexplained miracle, the boys are spared. Hiding at the chateau means that Paul must take on a Catholic identity. All the Jewish boys do. Paul is baptized. He takes Holy Communion. He even becomes an altar boy.
And believe it or not, I was a very good altar boy, because this was not an act for me. For any of us, I think. We lived what we did. And the Our Father and the Hail Mary were learned, in one session as I listened to everyone repeating them, because we had to utter these prayers constantly. We had to say grace. And I became a very good Catholic, which I suppose is being a good Jew, since Jesus was a Jew.
As the months pass into the next year, Paul falls into a routine that offers some semblance of tranquility. The home becomes a place of beauty and warmth.
And there is nothing in these walls associated with sadness, whatever may have torn us up inside, had nothing to do with this place. And so as I look at these walls, I just feel peaceful.
Landing was made this morning on the coast of France by troops of the Allied Expeditionary Force. The power of moving raisins was approaching.
By September of 1944, the Allies are in the process of pushing the Germans back to their own borders. The active unit V8, soldiers from the American 28th Infantry Division, encountered German troops in Jemwini. The skirmish extends to the grounds of the chateau.
And there, my friends and I stood out there with bullets literally whistling by and shells exploding, too dumb to take shelter, not really caring about it. And I think even the teachers, the monitors, were just as much in awe of what was happening and were watching with us and forgot to tell us to get back in. And it came the jeeps with their antennas, which we thought were fishing poles, and the boys got out and stood out in the open, shooting back.
By late afternoon, the encounter is over. The Americans moved the Germans into further retreat. The village of Jamwanya is liberated. So is the children's home of Elizabeth. All 83 Jewish boys survive.
For what it did for us, it was an immense fortress. A refuge, place of learning, place to grow up.
Now 11 and a half, Paul receives permission from Madame Tequet to leave the chateau. On October 30th, he says goodbye, and with Hope, his only companion, sets out for the old Brussels neighborhood in search of his mother.
She always said that she did not want to give up this apartment because that was the one place where my father knew that he could find her, and I too, after I went away, I would come back to that. And that's why she said she stayed. But she lived in fear throughout the war, every minute.
On a familiar street, hope becomes reality. After almost 2 years, Paul finds once again the soft embrace of his mother.
When I saw my mother at a distance, I recognized her, of course, immediately, and she, me, and we start running toward each other, almost like in a movie. And I was calling out Mutti, which is what I call her. And one of the first things I said to her was, oh God, in broken German, I was so homesick for you. And we just hugged. One of the things she said to me was that, you know, we can wait for Papa's return together. So we started waiting and inquiring, filling out forms, trying to find out where he was and when he would be coming home.
There were 2 rows of bodies stacked up like toilets. They were thin and very white. Murder had been done, that's who was about it. God alone knows how many men and boys have died there during the last 12 years.
The journey of Paul's father ends in the concentration camp of Buchenwald, where Nazi cruelty survives even while its army crumbles. It is here where Friedrich Schwarzbart dies. There is an epilogue to the story of Friedrich Schwarzbart, and it is found here in the Brussels office of the Belgian Ministry of Justice, in a series of rooms, row upon row of Nazi records, itemized ledgers of the cold arithmetic of life and death.
These are all the Jews who were deported out of Belgium.
Paul comes here out of curiosity, looking for his personal history in the code books of the underground, but records keeper Claire Beret helps him discover other information. Since 1960, Paul has known for certain that his father is dead, but it is only here and now that he learns how he died.
Here's my father. He entered Buchenwald on the 10th of February 45, coming from the camp of Grossrosen with his number 124951, and then he died there 1 week or 8 days later. It says died, I always wonder why they don't say murdered. This is so chilling, there are just no words for it. I know all these things exist, but to see your own father's life, little slips of paper from German registers, you know, there's all the information. It's incredible. Oh my God. That's how I remember him. Todes Marche, your Lord, he was part of the death march. Perhaps it says that both his feet were frozen. And perhaps sepsis means that he developed blood poisoning or something like that.
The cold arithmetic of life and death. Friedrich Schwarzbart, Tattoo number 124951. Died of blood poisoning at 5:30 on a Sunday morning. It was February the 18th, 1945, less than 2 months before the camp's liberation. He was 42 years old.
Is there ever a time when I don't think about my father? No, there really isn't. I think about him very, very, very often. He's always with me.
You know, this was a big battlefield. More than 4 decades later, the chateau is alive with familiar voices again.
Oh, God.
Paul and the others have returned to remember.
Come a long way for this.
On this warm Sunday afternoon in the Ardennes, they have come from their homes across Europe and America. With loved ones, 44 of the boys return for a reunion. For many, including Paul, it is the first time they've seen each other since their childhood days.
These are human beings that, even though we had not seen, for the most part, one another for 45 years, we walk up, and time means absolutely nothing. You embrace one another, you kiss, and the glow is so profound, so special.
His beloved teacher, Paul Jaurès, is here. Now 67 years old, he is a professor in Brussels. Madame Taquet, now 87 and a widow. And here is Mouton, the monitor who was taken away by the Nazis. The boys all thought he was killed, but he is alive, and he is here. They all return to see each other and hear words that acknowledge the purpose of this day, words that bring back the sacrifice and fear and death.
C'est à travers les mailles de ce filet que la résistance est.
David Inoloki, who organized the reunion, first entered the chateau on his 5th birthday. He says returning today is like finding a family he had lost.
And there's no border, no difference between those boys. They are all the same. Little boys saved. They have grown up now.
One of the people who saved the little boys is 66-year-old Andrei Herskovici, a Brussels school teacher in 1942. She became alarmed as her Jewish pupils vanished one by one during the Nazi deportations.
Je ne me rendais pas compte, au départ, je ne me rendais pas compte pourquoi.
I would ask why they were missing, and they told me they were taken away last night by the Germans. They went to a camp. And then I told myself it was impossible. We cannot stay like this doing nothing.
Others shared her feelings. In the same year, the Jewish Defense Committee was established to save Jews from extermination. The committee contacted authorities in the Belgian government who were sympathetic. They agreed to help provide secret havens, like the Children's Home of Queen Elizabeth. André joined the effort, and through the Belgian underground began the dangerous job of shepherding children.
C'était dramatique.
And it was very dramatic when I left with a child, and the mothers were begging me and kissing me and were asking me, tell me where the child is going to go. And I said, no. Afterwards, when I was in the street, I cried, but at the time it was hard for the mothers, and many of these mothers never saw their children again. That's what you should know.
The children of Jamellonia on this day also came to honor those who helped save them. They are called righteous Gentiles, non-Jews who saved Jews during the war. Israel's ambassador to Belgium presents diplomas and medals to 31 adults who saved the 83 Jewish boys from the Nazis. Madame Taquet is among those honored. priest is also recognized, the man young Paul so admired and respected that he too became a teacher. After the ceremony, mentor and student talk about the past.
Paul remembers when I arrived in Germany.
With new shoes, you had new shoes, and it was very difficult for you to walk.
I remember that because, you know, mommy equipped me for going away forever.
Yes.
So I had good shoes on. You became good friends. Yes. Then you became my godfather. In the true sense of the word.
He was not a rational boy. I had some pupils in my classroom who were good too, but who only worked with their heads. And Paul had also a very big heart. You understand what I mean? That was Paul. And because he had a very big heart, his eyes reflected what happened in his heart and in his body.
On the way to the banquet, Paul met another dear old friend, 73-year-old Father René Ardet, the priest who made Paul an altar boy.
He was our father with a capital F, and he taught us catechism, and he taught us about values, and he taught us about dignity and how to become a human being that matters.
Father Ardet, now with cancer, was advised by doctors not to attend the reunion, but he came, he says, because doctors don't always understand about God. At the final event of the day, 250 people gather for an afternoon of informal celebration. Here in the church banquet hall, they'll share food and drink and complete their renewal with the past. They sing to remember the love of the grown-ups who saved them, as well as the comradeship of the other boys. They sing to declare their own survival. They sing to forget what they can never reclaim, the dreams that were shattered on the night of the broken glass. They sing to celebrate one small, undeniable, and singular triumph of good over evil, a conspiracy of love between men, women, and children, with two faiths, but one God.
It was a Christian prayer, and we sang this, thanking the Lord to give us food for that particular day. Yes, and we were thankful. It was a Christian prayer, that's all.
Nous aimerions porter un toast à la santé de Madame Taquet,
A renewal of the past. In this hall, Madame Taquet is surrounded by people she cared for and loved so many years ago. In all, she was responsible for 125 Christian and Jewish children. As a family, it had its normal problems. When the children arrived, they brought very little with them, so Madame Taquet had to make certain there was enough food, clothes, proper instruction. There was not much time to always worry about the Germans. Of Paul, she remembers a young boy who was always well-mannered and educated. Madame Taquet and her husband called him the Little Prince.
Sometimes I say to myself when I look at you, if the outcome had permitted, you would have been my child. You had nothing to worry about. Nothing would have happened to you.
Je m'appelle Jacques Lambert.
A renewal of the past. Men who would become doctors, artists, businessmen, husbands, and fathers stand together on a stage and declare with great pride their names, their real names they were forbidden to say while they were in hiding here.
Je m'appelle Paul Extin.
And Paul pays tribute to the family whose name he borrowed. Andre and George Epstein are dead, but their 3 children remain close to Paul.
My feelings for all of them are total love and respect. They are indeed all members of my family in the deepest sense of the word.
As the hours grow short, they look to exchange a few more pictures, memories, details, to discover and to show how it all turned out. As though the past was close by, this afternoon of reunion allowed each of them to reaffirm the human capacity for love.
J'aime tous mes enfants comme je le faisais autrefois.
I still love my children the way I loved them at the time. Does a mother ever forget her children? I had adopted these children and I kept this affection for them. And I would do for them now what I did back then.
I was at the same time very happy to see all that people, and at the same time I was a little sad because it's past is no more. Past is no more.
Little by little, it became more and more emotional, and after a little while, it was almost overwhelming. Because all the memories of those days, and when I kept seeing all of us as kids again, all for one, one for all.
So for one day they have been together again, and now that day is coming to a close. They tell each other we must meet again, and on this one day, they have celebrated together what they have celebrated apart for the past 4 decades, their own survival. They have returned to the place and the people where that survival was secured. They have shown what they have made of that gift they were given here, a journey begun in fear and completed in triumph.
It's wonderful to be alive. It's wonderful to be alive.
The legacy offered in his youth, Paul has been a teacher for 32 years. He is also a proud husband and a father. His wife Gail is a concert violinist, and they are the parents of 2 sons, Mark 14 and David 13. A close, nurturing family, they continue the religion of his ancestors. In 1969, having remained faithful to her husband, Sarah Schwarzbart died.
Indeed, it is good to be alive, and also to have Paul here to share. I know he's interested in having any questions that you might want to ask. Do you have any remarks you'd like to share with us first, Paul?
Well, okay. Excuse me for sitting, but I'm having back problems. Can you? No, you can't. Now, can you hear me?
I'm going to turn it on.
Am I there? Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been many years since I started coming here to your wonderful school, and the car comes by itself. Doesn't find a parking place by itself. You know what that's like. But I was going to look it up the other day, but I didn't do it. How long ago I started here. I was just a kid. You know. God, you know, this was done in 1988. That's 23 years ago. I look pretty good. You know. Not that I've gotten so bad. At least you wouldn't convince my dear wife. I don't know, there are a few things. You cannot imagine how many times I've seen this documentary. And it's really a good piece of film. You know, I don't know if you're involved in film, but this was well made. Got 3 Emmys, which they deserved, you know. The writer, the narrator, and of course the cinematographer, Ken Schwartz, who kept telling everybody, you know, no, I'm not Jewish. No, and he isn't. You know, it's not Schwartz, it's Schwartz. I don't quite get that, but don't worry about it. Anyway, he was wonderful, and he shot all these hours and hours of film, and then spent from, I guess, was it May? From May almost to November, putting it all together and making an 82-minute film. Pretty good. I mean, it hangs together. And very well, I must say, of course. I'm very photogenic. I'm a terrific interviewee, right? I've had a lot of experience. But every time I see it, I say, it does a good job. So whether people see it with or without me, you know, if they see it without me, they still can get a great deal out of it. And when I'm there, I mean, then it's incredible. I know there were a few things. Boy, that apartment is little. You know, and I'd gone back to the building several times, but never had the nerve, or as we would say, the chutzpah, to go into the building. But Ken, with his camera on his shoulder, said, go in. I said, are you kidding? He said, what's going to happen? So I went in, we went upstairs, and just as you saw it, I pushed that door, and there it was, you know. It's incredible. That door led to the that door that was open inside the room, that led to the apartment where that lady of the night lived. So I'm sure that they either put it in since, or if not, it was blocked by our armoire, you know, a piece of furniture, because I had never seen it before. Not very important. I noticed that the hasp on the door is still there because we didn't have a key, we had a padlock. The hasp is still up there after all these years. I guess maybe they never got a key. And the man who owns the vegetable store down below happens to be a Turk. And he came up the stairs as we were up there still, or on the way down, I forget. And I said, oh my God, we're in for it now. Because, you know, he looked the part, big black mustache off to the sides, and he looked fierce. And I'd heard about Turks, and I was just a little bit worried. And he said, did you see the water in the kitchen? I put that in. You know, you want to be sure, you know, it was on the surface, you know, he just ran pipe in there. So that's all he was interested in now knowing. He was very, very nice, and, you know, and said, oh, you lived here, okay. You know, to him, big deal. So that was interesting in a way. Some of the translations, when they said that they called the Major and Madame Taquet called me the little prince, which is wonderful if you like the book, right? It's terrific. Never had a fox. I've had a few foxy ladies. So she said that I was well-mannered and educated, right? Hey, how can a kid be educated? That was a bad translation. She meant bien élevé, which means well-reared, you know, okay? Behaved and well-reared, okay. So at first that bothered me. Now I said, nobody will even notice, except when I bring it up to a scholarly assembly such as this one. Anything I should talk about, darling?
Maybe there's some questions.
Oh yeah, we'll give him a chance. Hang on. You told me you had another 3 hours.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Yes, dear.
You could tell them about your experiences crossing the border. Didn't really go into
Why don't I just answer their questions? And then if there's time, I didn't like that. So Go ahead, folks. If it's too personal, I'll skip it. But ask anything you want to ask. I reserve the right to answer or not. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for coming. For the year and a half that you were separated from your mom, did she know if you were alive? Did you have a clue about where you were?
None whatsoever. No, and none whatsoever.
Wow.
And same from my side. It's a lot, you know, it sounds tough. It's a lot tougher than what it sounds like, you know. I'm an inveterate optimist. I mean, I keep coming back here, right? I'm an inveterate optimist, and I was sure that I would see my parents again. I was half right, you know. But running into her on the street like that, that's something that still gives me goosebumps. And I think about it quite often. And since I speak so often and so forth, you know, I'm always led back into that. But I think of it on my own, and my dear wife and I discuss it quite often. She's really part of this. You know, for the past 10 years, she's gone to every place that have invited me, including Wyoming. The Indians of Wyoming. Wow, did I learn about our country, you know, by visiting an Indian reservation. First of all, they told me right away, you know, what's this, you know, Native American? We're Indians. Okay, so I switched to that. Very kind, very hospitable. Shoshone and Arapaho, they were absolutely wonderful. So, that was one question. I won't make every answer that long, believe me.
Paul, I have one.
Yes.
Were you able to ascertain how many of the boys had family that returned and how many didn't?
You all heard? No, the answer is no. That's something somehow we almost never discuss. I would say almost. No, we don't. We really seem to, some things come up, and other than that, we seem to revel in the present. You know? And at that dinner there that you saw, you know, we sang old songs and things like that. It's about the only time we did that. You know? And we do. We don't meet as a group anymore, but we do meet individually. You know, like the young man who introduced the ceremony, he was 5 when he came to the school, and of course I met him at the reunion. I didn't know him at the school. You know, I was 10, he was 5. There was just nothing, you understand? But now we were good friends, and we try to see each other whenever. We just saw each other last July, wasn't it, honey? When we went to Europe. I took Sherry to Brussels, Belgium for the first time to show her the old haunts and everything else. We shopped at that vegetable store, but we did not go upstairs. And he looks much less formidable now. He's lost a lot of weight and so forth. No. when André Herskovitzy, André Gulen says, you know, that mothers would beg her to tell her where she was taking the children, you know, and she's wonderful, by the way. She's just as vibrant and alive as you saw here 22 years ago. We had lunch with her. What she said was, at the end, and you know, many of these mothers never saw their children again, which is absolutely correct, but you understand it's because they died. Because the children were all saved who were put away like that. You understand that? I need to make that point. And what she said was correct, but it sounded, you know, to me it sounded as though they never saw their kids because the kids didn't come back, but it was the other way around. I wanted to straighten that out. Okay? Yeah. The priest died right after the reunion. And so did my godfather, Paul Joyce. He had become my god. He didn't want to pick me up at the train, and he became my godfather when I was baptized. And Madame Taquet, the principal, became my godmother. So, but I was not able to call them godmother and godfather, until we were liberated, because how did I explain to the other Catholic kids that I had just been baptized? You know what I mean? You probably hadn't thought of that. So I had to call him Monsieur and her Madame, you know. But then all of a sudden I could call him. So when I went to see her to leave, I said, Marraine, I want to leave, you know. Was she going to say no? Marraine means godmother in French. You figured that out, right? Maybe you all speak French. You never know, these university groups. Yeah, I was the only one baptized of all the children, because Marie Taquet and her husband had discussed that if I didn't find my family, they wanted to adopt me. And so they had me baptized. But she never said it to me, she said it to the cinematographer, so it was in one of the outtakes. And that's how I found out. You know, she had too much heart to say it to me, because I did find my family, and she did not want to interfere. These are real human beings. You know. This is heart. This is self-sacrifice. This is, my God. You know, the idea that I have of Christians based on that, most Christians I know can't come up to it. You know, they can't live up to it. You know what I mean? They're just really wonderful human beings. The family that gave me their name and said, you know, you can't go in the underground as a Schwarzbart, so they gave me their name, Extain, a good Belgian name. Had I been caught, they were dead, you know. Yeah.
Paul, I have a question.
I'm talking too much?
No, I have a question.
Please, please.
Could you clarify, the 83 boys who were there, they didn't know that there were any other Jewish kids there, correct?
Absolutely
It
correct.
wasn't as clear about that as it could have been.
Right. I did, up until the reunion, up until the invitation to the reunion, to be correct, I thought I was the only one. And so did the others. And that's what made it work. You know, you see some Hollywood rendition, or maybe not Hollywood, something, you know, where they discuss things among themselves at night, or they, you know, that's not reality. No, I can't say that that couldn't happen, but it would have put us in great jeopardy. And things were tough enough, you know. I mean, in the village, I know some of those farmers, you know, would have been glad to collect the rewards. I mean, it's human nature. But luckily, the secret remained buried, as it were. So when I received the invitation to go to that reunion, and I said, what is this? I'm going to go to reunite with myself. You know, and the letter explained that, no, that there were a number, and had both sets of names, the names that we went by and our real names. So I said, Paul Extain, Paul Schwarzbart, you know. And I don't know, I can still rock when I think about it. You know, it was an incredible thing to find out in 1988, after all this time, all those years. And I'm in close contact with both my godfather and my godmother, right? They never told me. We never talked about the past. They were always wanted to know about why children studies before that. What, you know, the present and the future never went back. And I respected the directions in which they guided me. You know, and I never saw my beloved teacher, Joseph Campé. You saw his picture with the glasses, you know, because we were in correspondence all the time. Between his last letter and the time of my first return to Brussels, he and his wife had passed away. So a total stranger opened the door. What a shock. But we stayed in very close contact throughout the years. You know, these incredible people. Some of my friends, family and so forth, when they saw the documentary, our younger son, David, who was 13 at the time, he said, well, I knew all these things, you know, Papa, because you've told us, but now I understand the chronology. Pretty good for a 13-year-old, but when you think it's my son, and it's, you know, understandable, right? And the people said, well, no wonder you became a teacher. I mean, you look at this, and you couldn't help it. All these people, you know, who helped, and so many of whom were teachers. So Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about what happened to the kids whose parents were killed.
Well, children who came home to no home were taken care of by agencies, orphanages and agencies. Or is that the same thing? And I personally don't know any, because of my group, of that particular school, they all seem to have been lucky and find at least a parent, as I did. Which is, in and of itself, an incredible statistic, isn't it? Yeah. The Jacques, the one who was 5 years old. Not Jacques, David. His name is also David, yeah, huh? Yeah, his name during the war was Daniel. And sometimes, his wife calls him Daniel. And I say, who's she talking to? His name is David. He was 5 when he came to the school. When his father came to picking him up, he told us he didn't know who that man was, and he called him Monsieur. Yeah. He found out. Yes, ma'am.
Unless there's any questions from the students, I have a question.
They have lots of questions.
I know. Let the students go first, yeah.
You want to go first? Please.
It's a little crazy question, but did you ever save your shoes? Those little fancy shoes?
Did I ever do what?
Did you save your fancy shoes?
Your shoes, your good shoes that your mother had you wear.
No, I understand the question. I've never. You were right. That was a crazy question. Kind of sweet, though. No. What that meant, I had 2 pairs of shoes, right? One that I wear every day, and one that was, you would say Sunday, and I would say Shabbat, okay? Which I almost never wore, maybe once a week, and not every week. And those are the ones that my mother put on my feet, of course. And they were not meant for walking from the railroad through the woods and so forth for miles and miles, And it's interesting because Paul Joris remembered that, That was cute, wasn't it? When he said you had new shoes on. Well, they were, not new, but they were new by comparison. What a wonderful man, huh? I mean, it comes right through. Yeah. He was a teacher for all these years at the University of Brussels, which meant that the professors have to publish, right? We have to publish. But if you teach in Belgium, you have to publish bilingually. You have to publish in French and in Flemish. So that means you're really bilingual. And he was wonderful. He married one of the other teachers at the school. They married while they were still there. And so they lived away from the school. And
there's a question up.
I'm not ready. And it was a love story. And they had 5 or 6 children. After the war, they went to the Congo, the Belgian Congo, and he taught there. They had something like 6 children. I always forget whether it's 5 or 6 because I never met any of them, I gotta tell him that story. And so in 1969, which is a long time after 1944, isn't it?
I just want to get close.
That's nice. It's the nicest thing a lady can say to you, isn't it? Not if you're a woman, but, well, forget that. Under certain circumstances, yes. I lost my choo-choo. No, I know. In 1969, I finally met a lady with whom I wanted to spend the rest of my life, Gail, whom you saw up there. And so, who was going to be the first person I would tell? Well, maybe the second, but certainly Paul Joris, right? So I called him up on, thank goodness for the phone, and I'm so excited I can barely speak. Paul, guess what? I'm getting married. For the first time after all those years, I'm really in love. And there's kind of silence and not the response I expected. I expected, wow, fantastic, congratulations. When he was finally able to talk, he said that his wife had just been killed in a train derailment. You know, the woman I had known, and he was totally engulfed in deep, deep grief, and he just couldn't share my joy, and I felt so guilty for being so happy, you know. And then many years later, you know, as I said, he was a professor at the University of Brussels, and he was also, he had the PhD program for his department, and so he had PhD candidates, and he and one of his candidates fell in love, and they married. Isn't that beautiful? So there's hope even for professors. I just needed to get that in. Where was the next question? Yes, ma'am. I couldn't hear that.
She wanted to know, when you were at the school,
Yes.
did you ever say Jewish prayers in secret?
No. 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 As I indicated earlier, there was no room for slip-ups or slips. And the only possible slip in all that time, involuntarily, would have been if one of those soldiers had taken the covers off my bed. Luckily for me, they thought it was really funny, and they were hitting each other on the back as they walked out. That was one of the funniest things that had happened to them. Maybe it was, you know. I mean, after all, they were in the war too. But that was close, you know. If anybody doesn't understand that, somebody else will explain it to you. No, nothing like that. It's an interesting question, though. I usually cried myself to sleep at night. But during the day, I was that happy-go-lucky little Cub Scout leader, very Belgian and very Catholic. You know, I mean, wow. For the morning after I got to the school was my first of all, when I got there, they were saying grace. Now, are there any Catholics in this room willing to admit it? Yeah, right. What was the language? Huh? Latin. You know, everything was in Latin. I had to learn a new religion and a new language. You think that's easy? Think again. So it was a matter of learning everything by rote, of course, without having any idea of concepts or meaning. Right? And yet to become the altar boy after about a week is kind of interesting, because I served Mass religiously for the full time I was there, once a day, every morning. I got pretty good with the Latin and everything else, and I took it very seriously. But I want to tell you something funny to break the tension. The morning after I got there, the first time, go to the chapel and Mass, right? I had no idea what this was or anything like that, right? Luckily, everything was said in Latin, but whenever the priest addressed the boys and explained anything, he did it in French. Yay. So, you know, during Mass, you know, he's reminding the boys, he's holding up the host, you know. That's what you call it, right? Here in English. Well, you know, the wafer for communion. And he says, you know, this is the body of God. And I'm going, whoa. I thought you couldn't see him. Right? I didn't say that. This was my first morning there. What does the priest do after he says that? Huh? You know. He puts it in his mouth and he eats it, right? I mean, he swallows it. I mean, the man just ate God. You know, I'm saying this to make you laugh, but I'm saying it respectfully. I'm telling you, this was not funny to this 10-year-old kid. You know, if you're a little kid, you accept anything. A 10-year-old kid, you don't. So if you think that was traumatic, think again, because right after that, he holds up the chalice with the wine. But he says, this is the blood of God. And I'll be darned if the man doesn't drink it. That just about did me in. But I survived it. And then I had to go and kneel and have God put into my mouth. you know, and got away with it, right? I mean, because I didn't cough or choke or anything. You understand? I'm saying this, as I said to my Catholic friends here, respectfully, but it is funny, kinda. I have a question for you in a minute. And in the middle of the week, I guess it was Thursday, when we all went down the hall, and I asked the kid, where we going? Huh? You always like that story, honey. And he looks at me like, what are you, stupid or something? It's Thursday. I said, yeah, but you know, I'm supposed to know everything, but I can't let on. He said, we're going to confession. On va à la confesse. It was even the short form. I was supposed to know that. What saved my butt that day, my neck if you insist, was the fact that we were in a school and not in a church. Therefore there was no
confessional.
Thank you. There was no confessional. The priest was sitting on a chair. We walked up to him. The first boy did his confession, got his penance and absolution, or maybe the other way around. And so when my turn came, I regurgitated. You know, I told him the same thing I had heard several times, and I got away with it. Because that's when he made me, right after that, made me his altar boy. So lying under certain circumstances is far from sinful. I want to ask you a question. During the dinner, did you notice anything missing? Maybe I put it like that. Oh, yes.
Nobody was crying. Everyone was laughing.
Yeah, we were all very happy. Okay, so that's not, okay.
Not grieving.
No, of course not. Anyone missing? Did you notice anyone missing that was very clearly not there? I wouldn't ask you if it weren't so visible.
You weren't there? Were you there?
No nuns.
No nuns.
You know, those were still the years of habits. You couldn't have missed a black habit with a white coif, you know. But they had all died in the meantime. All 3 nuns from the school had passed away, gone to their reward, hopefully. You know, I mean, if there is such a place, they gotta be in it. But I thought you would have noticed that. I know you were so taken. She didn't even see me.
Okay, Christine.
That's okay.
Sure. Can you, if it's okay with you, tell us how your mother survived and how she found you?
Well,
I mean, what did she do while you were in school? She know where you were, but then she found you. But how did she survive?
okay. You know she didn't find me, right? Yeah. I mean, if you were to see that in a B movie, you'd say never, right? And yet, truth is stranger than fiction. How did she survive? Well, she spent the entire war working for the family whose name I was using. You know, she was working with them to begin with, rearing their children. Jojo and Anne-Marie, whom you saw in the picture with her. Anne-Marie died, as it said, and I just talked to Jojo on the phone the other day. You know, and he now has a brother who was born after the war, so we're very close. Jean-Pierre and Georges and his wife and Sherry and myself. So in the morning she would leave that little apartment and walk down the street to their house and spend the day working there. She was cooking and cleaning and rearing the children, doing everything. And at night she'd walk back and sleep in her own bed in the little apartment. Now, when I was in the archives and you saw that bank of file cabinets and so forth, when you showed, when the archivist pulled out my mother's card, it was absolutely up to date. Those were the Gestapo cards, you know, absolutely up to date. The only thing that was wrong with the card was it said that Paul, her son, lives with her. And I wasn't, you know. But they could have plucked her any time of day or night. They just didn't. Now, I've thought about this, you know, and I've talked to people about it. Of course, No one will ever know why they didn't come and get her, because they emptied the house next door, the one across the street, the one across that way, and the one right across from the school. Where many families I knew that were part of our family as well. The only thing I came up with is, she told me that one day when she was coming home, there was a German officer going down the stairs. So luckily she met him after he did his business with the lady next door. You know, and he was obviously in a fair mood. You know, this is my explanation, you understand? And she says, you know, she thought her life had ended because she was wearing the star on her chest, you understand? And the man saluted her and said, gnädige Frau, which for those of you who speak German means lady full of grace. That's what you say in the Ave Maria in German. You know, so it's an appellation of great respect. Go figure. She said it robbed her of several years. And then he walked by her and walked on. And that was it. That was close brush. But they knew that she was there. Perhaps, here's my explanation, perhaps the house was off limits for searches and things because she was the only Jewess there and there were so many officers and so forth going in and out. Did that save her life? I don't know. But she was alive. You know, I get that question often. I can't give you an absolute answer. I think it's a pretty good guess.
We're ready for one more question from you. Yes.
Have you ever been to where the area of Buchenwald was?
No, I have not. Would you go? If your father were somewhere in that landscape? Yeah, it's a very honest answer. None of us knows an answer until we're confronted with the actual situation. You know, would you do what these people, the righteous Gentiles did? Would you save people? We all say yes, but would we? You know, would you save a man from drowning? Of course. But would you jump in if you were there? You know, and honestly, you cannot say until you're confronted with the situation. You know, and you have to be honest with yourself. Are we finished for today?
We are.
Well, let me say one more thing. I always have at least one more thing. This has nothing to do with this. I went to a lecture by a gentleman named Edwin Black. I don't know if that means anything to you. He wrote a book where he exposed the IBM role in helping the Nazis, you know, making computers for the Nazis. If you don't know this, read the book. Anyway, he came out in a nice big group, a little bigger than this one maybe, but anyway. And the first 20 minutes of his address, he talked about the fact that his wife was out in the lobby with the books and that they were for sale and that people could line up and buy them from her and he would autograph them. But he did that first, you know, and I thought, geez, I've never tried that. You know, I always bring books. Sherry is happy to sell them and I'm happy to autograph them. I think I'll do an Edwin Black and mention it like that. So if I see you lining up, I know that people were really lined up afterwards, let me tell you, and I was one of them. You know, it was very interesting. You're a very good group. Thank you so much for listening, because without people like you, who knows when it would happen again, huh? At least you know about it. And that's all we survivors can do, is try to educate people or tell them about it. Because here I'm preaching to the choir in this kind of course, but sometimes I talk to people and they really know less than nothing about this, and it's a big, big shock and surprise. Thank you.